figlio son raffismenza, si esti grandi tarail, figlio son raffismenza, oi, 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 figlio son raffismenza. Son raffismenza, si esti grandi tarail, figlio son raffismenza, oi, 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 figlio son raffismenza.
This is Nicholas Alexiou, Department of Sociology in the Hellenic American Project, Queen's College, CUNY, and in the series of Oral History Archives. We are very happy, very honored to host today on May 12, 2023 in Chicago, a very important figure of the American community and also the Greek American community and the Pontian community. Mr. George Mavropoulos, whose occupational title is electrical engineering and nuclear issues that we're going to discuss here, but also one of the important positions that he holds, it is in the Asia Minor and Pontos Hellenic Research Center. And I know that Mr. George Mavropoulos, Agapite Yorgo, dear George, you're also the founder of the center. Let's start by stating your name, where you were born, and where the family came from. And also, I want to thank you from my deepest part of my heart for accepting having this interview today. We are very honored. Thank you, Mr. George.
It's a pleasure. My name is George Mavropoulos. I was born in a village called Riakion near the city of Kozani, the northwestern part of Greece. I was born in 1938. My parents, both my mother and father, came from Trabzon, from Turkey, as refugees in 1923. They were expelled from their country. They were survivors. My grandfather was conscripted in the Turkish army, and he died at the age of 43 years old. Unfortunately, I did not get to know grandparents, both from my mother and father's side. They were from Trabzon also, and died. My grandmother died before she came to Greece, but my two other grandparents died before I was born.
How was the situation in Greece? How the Pontian population were received by the mainland Greeks? And when you growing up, you had a sense of the family background and the language and the customs.
Yes. The first few years, we lived, of course, in the village. And in this village, except three families from Eastern Thrace, the rest of them from various areas of Pontos. They were Pontian Greeks. We all spoke the Pontian Greek language. The dances, the tradition, everything was the same at this village because, as I said, all of them came from different parts of Pontus. But in 1947, we moved to the city of Kozani. Up to that time, I did not feel or get to have any experience, negative experience, I may say so. It was different when we moved to the city of Kozani. And prior to that, although I was 6, 7 years old, I did not attend any school, any classes, because there was a civil war. In the end of 1944, when the Germans withdrew from Greece, we had the civil war. And our village was in the slopes of Vermion, the mountain Vermion. There was a lot of activities. I may cover some of my father's story also. In 1943, the Germans surrounded the village along with some of the Greek traders, collaborators. They took my father, my uncle, and 6 other men to Kozani, eventually to Thessaloniki, and then to Germany. They were sent to Essen, which was the border between Holland and Germany. Of those 8 men, in 1945, when they were returning, did not survive. He was killed.
So your father and the others, they participated in the resistance?
My father, that night, he was a tailor. He learned this profession when he left Trabzon and ended up in Athens. He learned that trade. And that night, he was going to take a sewing machine to the mountain. So the village was surrounded. Although the German soldiers were not very many, but as my father later on mentioned, he said that they were talking about doing something instead of going to the prison, but then they did not want to do, to kill or do something, although, there were 8 of them. But because of the family issues and so on, the Germans would seek revenge, or the traitors and so on. So anyway, my father came back, and he survived along with my uncle. But unfortunately, after the German occupation from 41 to the end of 44, we have the Civil War. So after he came back, a year later, we moved to the city of Kozani. As I mentioned before, we did not have any schools at all. I was 7 years old. I did not know how to write, how to read. And because of my age, they put me and it was March, the month of March, almost the end of the school year. They put me in the 2nd grade. And I remember a teacher asked me to, I spoke the Pontian language. They didn't understand me, and I did not understand the other fellow students and so on. It was quite different. And the teacher asked me to do some kind of a multiplication, couple numbers, and I did not know what she was talking about. And she turned around and slapped me in the face. You know, it's a trauma for a young student or a child to go through that experience. And you ask about the experience also in the city. You know, people, some of them welcomed, you know, the Pontians or others, Micrasiates, for instance, but the majority of them had a kind of a hostile attitude and also tried to make fun of our language, of our dancing, and things like that. People were not educated, did not know any better. So just like the refugees that came to Athens and other places were not actually welcomed by the Greek government and so on and so forth. But that's another chapter. What I was going to say, though, is that after, you know, once the Civil War started, and there were a lot of skirmishes and activities near the Vermion, in 1948, the rebels attacked the village. They wanted to get these German collaborators. And of course, the Greek army intervened, sent some troops, and some of the homes were burned. And I remember that day, I came back from school and I went to the neighborhood to play with the other kids, to play soccer with the other kids. When I came back home in the afternoon, I saw the house was ransacked. It was upside down, everything. Our house was on the second floor, and my father's store was on the first floor. And I saw my oldest brother being very upset. He said, our father is in prison. The Greek police was here, and they were looking for communist books and so on. And actually, at the time, we couldn't buy books. We had very few. We would borrow books from to read and study from others, but we had few books, and they were all gone. The police took the books with them. At the time, the Greek government was following the Truman Doctrine, which basically was saying that we have to eliminate communism. So I never forget that experience with the military courts, the emergency sort of military courts that with hundreds and hundreds of people will be put in prison. They would be accused of certain crimes, and then before the sunrise, many of them were being executed outside of the cemetery of St. George, outside of the city. And from what I know at the time, these prisoners were not buried inside the church, but they were supposedly atheists or communists, and they were buried outside. Another vivid sort of strong kind of a picture that I have is sometimes they had gatherings in the center of the city, and they would one time, at the time where Aris Velouchiotis was executed, they brought 3 heads and they posted them by this building where it was used from the balcony for some of the speakers to speak about the political issues, the communists, and so on and so forth. But they were very, very difficult years as a child going through that. And my father was going to be executed, but luckily we were able to get 30 gold British coins, and that money was given to the governor of the city, of the state, who was Pontian, and he was able to intervene so that eventually my father was freed. He did not do anything. Some of these people were in the resistance to fight the Germans. Later on, they were labeled as communists, and
therefore enemy of the state.
Enemy of the state, and they were, as I said, they were killed. I never forget. From my village, there was another Pontian, Pavlos. I cannot remember his last name at this time. He survived also. He was a villager. He was working his farm, and these people didn't have any knowledge about communism, capitalism. They were just people that did whatever they could to survive in a strange land, because for them, being in Greece, it was not their home. Anyway, this man survived. He had 5 children. It wasn't too far away from our home, maybe a few blocks away. I remember in the city of Kozani, they had those tricycles, the police and especially the army, and they were shave off women's hair, something that some of these women experienced in the islands when they were transported to Greece. And it was very shameful kind of an act for them. But I remember that they would shave their heads, they would parade them in the square there in the city. And this man, along with his wife, was executed, and he left 5 children. So these are the casualties of the German occupation and, unfortunately, the Civil War. And I have several other, difficult experiences especially in the city of Kozani, where I left in 1958 to get to the United States. Prior to that, prior to 1958, there was a man, a Pontian man, who came from Norfolk, Virginia, or Mavropoulos. And he met my father. They were from the same area. And my father made a couple suits for him. And at the time, I was taking some, English language course at an English institute nearby. And Mavropoulos said that I was studying to go to Italy for college because there were very few limited numbers that there would be, it would be accepted in schools and in colleges because Greece did not have, universities that would accommodate big numbers. And also there were the top students or others who were from influential families and so on. Anyway, I was studying Italian to go to Italy, and then Mavropoulos said, no, I'll take you to Norfolk, Virginia. So that was in 1957, but then that summer, he came back and he changed his mind. He said, I want to live in Greece. He had a sister there. And so I had some work done, prepare myself to go to the United States. So luckily there was a fellow student here at Roosevelt University, and through him I got an application. I applied to become a foreign student, and I was able to pass the English language test in Thessaloniki. But then going through the application and the forms, there was a form that was needed. The form was called
for political beliefs.
Yes.
And affiliations.
Yes, yes. And
τα πολιτικά φρονήματα.
Political beliefs,
Yeah.
if we can,
Yes. Yes.
And you had to have clearance. Unfortunately, 1 month passes by, 2, 3, 4, 5, nothing happens. So we got stuck. I couldn't get the certificate from the police. Finally, there was a good friend of my father's friend from Smyrna, who in Kozani, he had a factory, custom-made Persian carpets. And he saw how sad and, how he felt. And he said, I'm going to try to help you. And he did. He made a big Oriental carpet, custom-made Persian carpet. He took it to Athens. I don't know if I should say all that, but
yes.
He took it to Athens, to the police, not headquarters, but someone higher up.
The chief.
Eventually, I got the certificate. But the point is that, though, I was enrolled in the Boy Scouts organization. I was very active. And here I am, because my father survived the concentration camps. He was labeled communist. He was in prison for no reason at all. And as a result, I had difficulty getting to have this clearance. But anyway, eventually I made it.
And how did you come? You left from Thessaloniki or from Piraeus?
I left from Patra. There was an Italian boat, Saturnia, that would come from Patra to Italy, make several stops, and then in Naples, stop Brindisi, and eventually, through Portugal, through the Atlantic Ocean. And finally, after 14 days, we ended up in New York. But it was a difficult trip and a rough experience, because I got sick with kidney stones, and later on, of course, that year in May, I had an operation. But going through the Atlantic for 3-4 days, I was very ill.
And you didn't know anyone?
My friend who helped me, he already moved to New York, and when we reached New York, he was there. Then he put me the next day on a train to come to Chicago, and here in Chicago, there was a young fellow whose father was in the concentration camps with my father. So he met me here. I had no other relatives. And I came here and started working illegally, of course, because we were not allowed to work. And my first job was a dishwasher, working like 70 hours a week for $38. But $38 was even enough to start going to college, and later on, of course, I had other jobs.
Can you tell us if you remember how you felt when you came to a big city like Chicago? It was a cultural shock for you?
You see, at the time, we had no televisions, we had no pictures. We were only dreaming of how it would be on the other side of the Atlantic, the other world, unknown world. And I remember an incident. The night before the next morning went to Patras, we were in Athens with my father and mother, and there was a house where there were some high-ranking army officers, and because one of them was in Kozani, served in Kozani, and we got to know him, and they told my mother, what are you really doing? You're sending your son to the other part of the world. How safe is going to be, and how are you going to communicate? He's only 19 years old, But I told him, I said, look, I'm determined to go, because what am I going to do in Kozani or in Greece? What chances do I have? I used to, there were some engineers in Kozani, and an educated person was well known, or was an example. And I wanted to be an engineer too. Just, this idea got into my mind. And my father and my two brothers were working in the tailor shop. But I didn't want to be doing that. I did it, I was helping while I was in school, but not as a profession. So that's how the idea got into me.
And how your classmates in college received you, knowing that you were Greek? They received you well, or you had some kind of discrimination because you were Greek? How was Chicago in the 1960s?
Well, I cannot say there was a discrimination, but it was something that I should mention is that I used to be scared, not only respectful, but also being scared of teachers or the policeman. So here, while I was working and attending some of the classes in the evening, sometimes, like at the beginning, I felt tired. And one time, I fell asleep. I woke up and I got scared because I thought the professor is going to tell me something or punish me. And that was the kind of a fear mentality, because in Greece, you do something like that, they turn around, they slap you, and they expel you or whatever. But the teacher did not say anything. He continued on, and that was my first experience. At the first courses, first semester that I took, 2 classes were in the evening, And other than that, they were just about everybody else, or many of them, from different backgrounds, different cultures and so on. But of course, when you're a foreign student, when you have an accent, speak the language, I did not feel the discrimination as much as I felt in the city of Kozani as a child. Because sometimes I would go to buy a loaf of bread from the store, and a woman customer would say something negative about me, about... It's just a very, very sad chapter that I don't want to go into details of it. Because, like I said, people did not know any better. And especially the Pontians with their different language, they were quite a bit of, they were discriminated and made fun and so on.
But also when you came here in Chicago to study to the American University, and all this nice description you said, how was the environment there, the social and the educational environment, that you found it more positive than it was in your own country in Greece. This is very interesting documentation. But also at that time, in Chicago was an established Greek-American community. You came across with the community, it was supportive.
No,
how was that?
They were not. Unfortunately, there was a restaurant east of here on Adams Street. And I worked there for a couple months. And actually the owners were from Eastern Thrace, up to Neoskopos. Neoskopos is now in, the western part of the Thrace, as we know it. And I mentioned before that I had some kidney stones. And at one time, I was a helper trying to, in the morning they had juices and some sweet rolls and so on, and I was cleaning up and helping out, and I was supposed to get a couple $, you know, for my work and so on. And I remember I broke a small juice glass, and I went to get paid because I was going to the hospital. And the owner said, well, come back later. There were about $26 he owed me. And he said, come back later. Anyway, after I got out of the hospital, I went to get paid, and I saw he gave me $24. And I asked the manager, I said, what happened to the other two? Well, he says, you remember? I said, what? You broke a glass, juice glass, small glass. And unfortunately, that was the help and the experience that I had with the Greek Americans, you know. When I went to University of Missouri, for months, I was working like 23 hours a day. I had 3 jobs. Two of them were like a security guard. And I would sleep, wake up, go in and do my rounds and so on and so forth. I had about $600 with me. When I went for registration and so on, there was very much left. But my advisor, Professor Tudor, when we had a discussion, I told him, I said, you know, I'm having some financial problems because I didn't make enough, save enough. And the tuition was $400.
This is for graduate. Sorry to interrupt. This is for graduate studies.
The graduate, yes, the graduate school. And he said, George, let's go to the registrar's office. He told them, George is a foreign student. He's not a non-resident. He should be classified as a resident because, look, we have few foreign students here, a graduate. And he convinced them. And that man did so much for us because they were later on, we had more Greek American students from Urbana, from the University of Illinois, coming for the graduate school. But my God, I'll never forget that man.
Who was an American?
An American, Professor Tudor, James Tudor. And until, you know, he passed away, when I was attending, when I was going to see my daughter and my son, who follow also my steps and went to University of Missouri in Columbia, I would visit Professor Tudor and his family and so on.
So you kept some kind of contact and friendship for these years?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, two things. So from a F1 foreign student, at some point you were naturalized, and then if all this time that you were working different jobs and studying, you had a chance to also visit Greece and see your family, your mother?
You see, when I was at the University of Missouri for 2 years, I was not able to work. So I had to borrow some money. And my father, of course, was able to send me some money here and there through somebody, you know, and help me out quite a bit. But the thing is, once I got a job with ComEd, the electric company, I was able to pay off the $5,000 within a year. Yeah. And as far as, I think you mentioned about as far as communications and so, it was not easy. You know, I would I remember I made the 6, 7 years that I was here, I made 2 phone calls. And in Kozani, we didn't have a telephone. Some neighbor had. Anyway, it was quite a process to be able to connect, but and to talk, you know, on the phone compared to what it is today. Different world, you know. Technology has advanced so much that sometimes I go back and say, you know, here I was writing to my mother and a letter, and then she would write me back, and it would take a month to receive a letter and to hear about news and so on. So it was, you go into the other world that it's unknown, and we have no direct communications. So that's why I mentioned this event, the incident where this officer, the army officer, mentioned, and he made a statement that, where are you sending your kid, you know? You may not see him, you know.
And then you became an American citizen because of some changes in American legislation?
Yes, President Johnson, if you remember, in 1965, 66, changed the immigration laws. And because of that, I was able to apply for residency and citizenship and stayed in this country.
But also you had an offer for returning to Greece. You always, at some point you thought to return to Greece and work there and live there?
I did. I was married in 1970. My wife was from Athens, Greece. And in 1970, and my mother was, she came to our wedding and my father for a short time. And my mother, her dream was for me to go back, you know, to come home. And in 1973, before we came back, my daughter was born, she was 10 months old. Before we returned, she said, why don't you try to stay? And then one of the high school professors, who happened to be Pontian, and he was at the store, he said, I can arrange so you can go to Athens, Greece, and have an interview, because I already had about 6, 7 years field experience with Commonwealth Edison, the electrical company here. And of course, ComEd was far more advanced as far as technology, as far as protecting the equipment, the protective schemes they had and all that in technology. And I did go to Athens. I had an interview with 2 directors, or 3, I think, and from the, and they offered me a job at the end. But then the sticky part was that one of them said that if you accept a position at the E, then you have to, you cannot any longer be an American citizen also.
You have to,
so you have to
drop one of the dual citizenship.
Give away, yeah. And at the time, with the dictatorship and everything else, having all that previous experience, and my wife did not like the idea either, so we returned to Chicago.
I would like to honor the memory of your wife, and I would like you to tell us how you met.
Yes, we met at the north side of Chicago in 1969. Just happened to meet there, and of course at the time with the ongoing turmoil in Greece and so on, it so happened that we had the same political ideas and philosophies, and so right away there was some kind of a...
It was a strong anti-junta movement.
Yes.
In the States, or more in Europe, but also in the States.
Well,
Mikis was here sometimes, yes. Melina was here.
Melina with Papandreou, and my wife and I attended that event here at Sheraton.
Which was very important and significant,
yes.
According to historians.
There was also an event at the auditorium, and then I remember when Mikis Theodorakis was in prison, Maria Farandouri and the whole group of musicians, they came to Chicago and they were going to perform at the Civic, at the Orchestra Hall. And my mother-in-law, I remember, had them for dinner and luncheon a few times because they were here. And financially, you know, they were not doing well. But I remember my mother-in-law, we were not married at the time, but I knew my wife and she mentioned that. And so there was quite an experience to meet these people. And later on, of course, when Theodorakis came to Chicago, along with Farandouri, my wife spoke to Maria quite a bit, and so we had quite a bit of, you know, good experience. But as far as there was a lot of opposition, though, the people who were against the military junta was a minority. It was a minority. The majority was in favor. Because I remember the demonstrations and the opposition that we had when Melina and Andreas Papandreou were here. And by the way, my mother-in-law's sister, for some time, was taking care of Nikos Belogianni's son.
Your wife was Greek-born or American-born?
No, Greek-born.
Greek-born.
Yeah, she was born in Athens, and in 1965, the family came over.
And with the parents, with her parents?
Yes. But as I said, you know, politically, we were somehow had the same ideas, and that was one of the reasons to get married. We agree in politics, which was important at the time.
Meanwhile, you get some promotions through your job, and you move to a different position. And also, you were trusted by the city of Chicago to have some major projects here in Chicago.
Yeah,
Tell us about the projects.
Yeah, I was lucky that when I was accepted to work for ComEd, there were two of them directors of a couple departments, and they told me, they said, George, any young engineer needs the field experience. So, because for 1 year, we were we were visiting different departments so that we can get an idea and then choose the right department. And I listened to those two men. They said, you need the field experience. So in 1967, I was assigned to the Central Division, which was from the outskirts of Chicago, from Austin all the way to the lake, North Avenue to 39th Street. All that territory was belonged to the Central Division. And my department was the field engineering, to be out in the field, either substations, or we had a couple generating stations in our division. And after the embargo and after the problems that we had with the oil, some of these high-rise buildings were built as all-electric buildings. Therefore, we needed the power. And we were building some substations close to the loop, to the city. And we had to bring in high-voltage equipment in order to be able to have the supply that was needed. As a matter of fact, my last assignment before I went to nuclear engineering in 1978 was the Sears Tower. I worked there as a field engineer for 2 years. And we needed about heavy power. We needed adequate power at the beginning and also at the end when we completed the project. So we could not bring in any towers, build any towers in the city, you know, and bring in transmission lines. But it so happened that some 100 years back, these tunnels that they had in the city, and they're still there, these tunnels were to bring in coal from west. We're talking about 2 or 3 levels below the surface. And then bring the garbage, take the garbage outside. And so we used those tunnels and had some 138 kV lines from the Greek town, from Jefferson substation, and build in these cables, bring them to Sears. And we had 200,000 megawatt consumption in there. And we were successful. And of course, the building in itself, inside the building, after the transformation of voltage from 138 to 12,000 volts, we'll take the 12,000 volt high risers, we call them, cables, and bring them all the way to the 104th floor. Actually, from 4 sides of the building. And in every floor, we had some substations because there's so much consumption of energy. And that was my last assignment before I went to nuclear engineering. And I thank these gentlemen. It was not safe work. Actually, I lost 2 of my co-workers here downtown where were burned when we had some transformers that exploded.
So in a way, that gives you a feeling that because of these public projects and for the common good, do you feel that Chicago is your city, that you are part of this
yes.
community?
Yeah,
so,
in a way, yes. I feel like I have contributed to some extent, you know. And sometimes I tell my friends, you know, this is the work that I did. These are the projects, the buildings, the substations. So yes, it's a good feeling, you know, where I came from a village from Greece without any school, any education until I was 7 years old. You know, never had any education at all, and I was able to, you know, and the same thing with the medical. I was 10 years old when I first saw a doctor because I had some red spots in my. Prior to that, in the village and even in the city, there were no doctors. It was very difficult. There were no hospitals. Well, it's different now.
But how that affected your ethnic identity? How do you identify yourself? You as a Greek American, as an American, as a Pontian. There are so many levels and many angles to self-identify yourself. Because you contributed to all those identities and ethnic backgrounds.
I had a very tough young experience, okay? Discrimination, poverty, and injustice. When you see, you know, people getting killed. But then later on, after I was done with school, and I put in more time to study all these events. And I was lucky to, a friend of mine who used to come to visit me at the First National Bank when I was in the nuclear engineering, he would have a cup of coffee with me, and a fellow Pontian, older, from Kozani. He says, "George, you should get involved with the Pontian Society of Chicago," which was founded in 1977. And I did, eventually. But, you know, most of the activities at the time were about the tradition, dances, and getting, you know, associated with one another as fellow Pontians. But there, and with other events, ongoing events, I saw that there's an opportunity to tell our story, you know. And I remember in 2006, when I first visited the Armenians up north and at the Holocaust Museum also at the time, and I felt that here is something missing, some injustice. The Armenian genocide is well known. The Holocaust is well known. My father was in the concentration camps too, you know. But my father was a refugee, you know, and we lost people. I lost my grandparents. And so these were the questions that sort of I had to think about these things. And although I had a negative experience that some people may say I would not have anything to do with Greeks or Greek history or the injustice. But then seriously thinking and studying all these events, especially the historical events, you see the injustice that happened to Greece, to the Greek people, the betrayal of the Allies, especially in 1922, you know, and of course in 1919, in May, when we landed troops to protect our people in Smyrna, and guaranteed by the Allies, the French, the British, Italians, and so on and so forth, Americans. And so what I'm trying to say is these are the events and points of history that sort of created an interest in my mind, and the injustice that I felt at the time and even at this time, that we lost so many people, hundreds and thousands. We lost a homeland that contributed so much to the Western world. And yet, in Greece, we were afraid to say, I'm a Pontian Greek, years back. And here, you see that the Armenian genocide is so well known. And I remember in 2005, where Sun Times published an article, an announcement that the state of Illinois had approved the educational mandate to teach the Holocaust genocide and the Armenian genocide. And at the time, the society was not well organized. We tried to do something, but it was too late to put in our name. But at least the mandate said Armenian and other genocides. So as a result, what we're trying to do for years now, we work with the Holocaust people, the Armenians and so on, in the educational system, and we promote our teaching guides and promote our course.
I would like you to tell us more about the Center of the Asia Minor and Pontos research. We have some books here that you have at the center. A lot of them, it's your own publication, you support it, and other donors. So what are you trying to do with the publications?
Well, what we did with the Pontian Society, at the time I was the president, I asked my fellow Pontians, I said, we have some money. Why don't we have a conference? And in 2008, we brought in the late Dr. Psomiadis and Dr. Stavru, a Cypriot from who teaches at the University of Minnesota, and my mentor, George Sherinian, an Armenian, an excellent person who till today is helping me. We had the first conference, and for 2 days, we asked all these questions. Why our story is not known? What can we do? And George Sherinian presented the model of the Armenians. At the time, for 40-some years, they spent millions of dollars. They were well organized to present their issue in Washington and elsewhere in the educational system. And our story was not well known outside of Greece. So we said we need a central location where we have publications, where we can get the academics together. We need to have a number of things, publications and so on and so forth. Our story is well known in Greece. The historians outside of Greece do not know English, and English is the international language. So if we can do that, then we can have the international world and scholars to get to know. And so we set the basic steps. And based on that, in 2013, we applied, created the center here at the building of the Greek islands. And we have had several academic conferences where we asked the historians, Greeks, Armenians, Americans, and so on, Turkish historians, to provide an original research paper, do the presentation, but then after that, to submit to us the whole research paper in various topics, and we did. So over the years, we were able to publish all these research papers, original research papers, which you promote through our website or through Amazon, through our organizations, especially the Federation of the Pontian Organization of USA and Canada, New York, New Jersey, and so on and so forth. So we have distributed a lot of papers, a lot of books, and also we have produced 2 teaching guides, one for high schools and colleges, and the other one
like this one.
Like this one, yes. Yeah. And the other one is for grammar for 10 to 12 years old, to know the Greek mythology, to know that how the Greeks arrived in Asia Minor, and chronologically how this area was developed and flourished by the Greeks, and of course last century, by 1923, they were expelled from their homeland. And so we do have some workshops, we attend workshops, or for schools we invite, or we go to schools to provide that information through slides, PowerPoint, and also books and so on. So on our website, someone could see all these different activities.
What is the name of the website?
The name of what?
Or your website?
Hellenic, it's www.hellenicresearchcenter.org, O-R-G. 3 words, hellenicresearchcenter.org.
Do you have any plans to produce a documentary that somehow has the concise history or the understanding of what is a genocide and how that happened to the Greek peoples,
For some reason, right from the beginning, in 2008, I worked with we asked the people from On Air Productions to record the session. At the time, I don't think I knew Costa. And they came in.
Sorry to interrupt you, but for the record, our film director, since you mentioned Costa, the name of the film director and producer, it is Kostas Stamatakos, Konstantinos Stamatakos, and I thank you very much for your support and patience.
So what we did, we started, since we invited these scholars, we said, why don't we have an interview? We were recording the whole video, recording the whole session, but in addition to that, I said, let's ask some specific questions regarding these historical events, and we did. And a few years back, when we started, we had more funds, we started the production of the documentary. We already had quite a bit of a number of interviews with internationally known scholars, and most of it was used. So we did 3 years ago, asked Bill Curtis, who is well known in the industry, and some of the other people who work for CBS. And there is a gentleman, John McCarthy, who did the script. It took him about over a year.
And your library was very helpful to him,
The library was very helpful. He was visiting the library. We had discussions at at our office in the library or through phone calls and so on to clarify certain things and so on. But mainly I asked John McCarthy to write a documentary, the script, that was fair, the way he felt as an outsider, and not the way I wanted to present, but we wanted the historical facts.
Historical facts and
in case,
scientific research.
Yes, and in case someone wants to challenge it, either in court or whatever, the documentary to stand by itself. And as a matter of fact, we have this documentary, or this book that I have, all these slides, all these points. Every one of them, at the bottom of the page, we have all the references. It doesn't come from what I say.
It is a scientific research, documented.
Documented. And we were able to produce the documentary Lethal Nationalism, Genocide of the Greeks, 1913-1923. We cover the whole history of the Greeks, not only the Pontians, but the Greeks of Asia Minor, Eastern Thrace, and Pontos.
Yes, I've seen that. It is well known so far, this one. Do you have any support of the official government or departments of the government?
No, we do not have any support from the Greek government. And as a matter of fact, even from some major institutions or foundations, like we applied to Niarchos, Onassis, and other foundations, but because we started from zero and we were not well known, a big organization, unfortunately, the response was always negative. But we were lucky that at the end, towards the end, the Hellenic Foundation here in Chicago gave us some money, a grant, and also the Savidis Foundation, which is in Russia, gave us also some money, and they recognize the work that we've done in the academic world, and when we asked for support, they gave us some money, but most of the money came from smaller, donations from individuals and so on.
Do you feel that, let's say, the leaders or the elites of the Greek academic community should have done more, or if you give them an opportunity to participate, you think this is where you should go, to involve more the Greek American community into that?
Unfortunately, you see, the Greek case is different compared to the Armenian. The Armenian genocide in history is well known by all the Armenians throughout the world. In Greece, though, don't forget, for years and years, no one would talk about what happened during the Great Catastrophe, Megali Catastrophe. No one was talking about it for decades. It was forbidden in some ways. We were involved, we were busy and occupied or whatever with our own problems at the time. From 1920s and on, with the internal problems, with the dictatorships, Metaxas and so on and so forth, German occupation, civil war. So it was only in 1980s, late 1980s, when Andreas Papandreou visited Panagia Soumela in Vermion, and then during that celebration of Panagia Soumela, the Greek Pontian organizations spoke to him about the recognition, the need to recognize the Pontian genocide. That's how it started, by late 1980s. And so you see, the majority of the Greeks abroad, influential people, rich people, even educators, did not know anything. When we started 20 years ago, we would talk about the genocide, and our own people, our own teachers would say, genocide of the Greeks, or Pontians? What are you talking about? And the problem is that some of the influential people in the United States, so we have a very strong community. They have the manpower, they have the money, they have the influence. But it is very difficult for us to approach them. Because if I cannot even call anybody, who am I, you know? So we struggle all these years. We have struggled quite a bit. And you know, we have produced such a great documentary. And the last year or so, we're trying to get it through Netflix, for instance, or a major platform. But we needed to, we cannot talk to Ted Sarandos directly, you know, who is the chairman of Netflix, or somebody else. We have to go through a marketing company, and that marketing company has to be paid, you know, $40,000, $50,000, money that we don't have because we use that money for the documentary. So you understand the difficulty.
Theoretically, it's not much, but at the same time, it's a lot of money for the organization to find the money. The community can afford $50,000 for such a cause, I guess, right? So maybe it is an issue of we need a better organization as a community to be more aware. What is your dream? What is your vision?
Well, my vision is just that I feel that if we can get the documentary, which one of the best, no one else till this day has produced such a documentary in Greece or everywhere. If we can get it to a platform like Netflix, because it is in the English language, that documentary will be viewed by Turks, by people from Middle East, people throughout the world. That's all I'm wishing for. We've done our work, and we need someone to support it, to say, okay, I'll take care of it. $50,000, I'll take care of it. Go ahead, or they can hire Netflix themselves. I don't want to name any names, but A or B or whatever the name is, they can very well do that. But the thing is, you have to show them the film. They have to see the document. You know, once they see it, like we have some of the comments from people who viewed it because we had it on Vimeo and people paid a certain fee. It's unbelievable, the comments we have from non-Greeks about the Greek genocide, the story that these people did not know anything about. So this is my dream, and I feel sort of, I don't know, I wish, I don't want to say anything, I wish someone could, really help. I'm trying to get the film to be viewed at the Archdiocese in New York. It's been about 6 months. I'm hoping that at the time.
Or some film festivals, perhaps. This is a very important documentation, but I would like to you to share with us your vision about the future of the Pontian population, or the future of Hellenism, the continuity, and how you realize one thing is the recognition, and then what? Tell us about your
Yes.
plans and
I feel
visions.
that to some extent, if we are to produce the information like we started years back, provide that information to the whole world because of the language, and we have these publications to university libraries and so on. As I said, these books remain. They become known. As the Latin said, scripta manent, verba volunt. So the more we do, even the Greek community, the young generation, will get to know their own history because they have these publications. The same thing with the teaching guides, which is very important to start from the beginning. Now, as far as recognition, that's one aspect. It is nice to be, the genocide to be recognized, by the world. But at the same time, though, producing the material is also important because it's going to be staying and it's going to be available in ages. And the same thing with the documentary. The documentary for generations is going to be there. People will be able to access it and see in 1 hour the whole brilliant history of the Hellenes of Asia Minor. At the same time, the tragic end of those Hellenes who built cities and built monuments and gave to the world, to the Western world, all this technology and culture and so on.
I would like, in your concluding remarks, to give your greetings or your vision about the Greeks, the Pontians, the Greek Americans in America, but also I would like you to hear it in the Pontian language. So we document, because you're a native speaker, and it is very important to have to document this language, which has a long tradition from antiquity. It's not a language that invented at some point, but there are elements of the Pontian dialect that are directly
exactly
from the antiquity.
Ionian, the Aeolian. It is Costa and I sometimes, when we have an interview or talk, we cite a poem or something, and it's amazing. And I feel, proud that, we still have those roots. And another thing too is as a Pontian, I don't want to, brag about the Pontians, but it is something that needs to be mentioned. Look at our dances.
Oh yes.
They date back 2,000-3,000. Plato talks Xenophon, talks about Anavasis, talks about the Pyrrhios Horos,
So that's why I would like your greeting, ο χαιρετισμός σου, να ακουστεί στα ποντιακά. Και άμα θες να το εξηγήσεις και στα αγγλικά για να μείνει.
Well, δεν να λέω σαν χαιρετισμό, έναν χαιρετισμό να λέω στο ακροατήριο. Ποντιακά καλατσεύω, αλλά εφόσον επειδή είμαι στην Αμερική 60 χρόνια και θυμούμε όλα αυτά τα σχηρά, τα πόντια όπως τα μιλούσαμε μικρά παιδεία. Να σας πω και ένα περιστατικό. Το 2018 είχα συναντήσει τον κύριο Σαββίδη στο γραφείο του στη Θεσσαλονίκη και μου μίλαγε ο άνθρωπος ποντιακά, γιατί μόνο ποντιακά ξέρει. Και δυσκολευόμουν να του μιλήσω τα πραγματικά ποντιακά, γιατί αυτοί απάνω στη Ρωσία μένανε μόνοι τους στα χωριά κλπ. Και μου λέει, όντας θα ελέπωσε ξανά, θα καλατσεύσει καλύτερα. Και του υποσχέθηκα, όταν θα σε συναντήσω ξανά, μου λέει, θα μιλάς τα ποντιακά καλύτερα. Και του υποσχέθηκα ότι πραγματικά θα βελτιώσω τα ποντιακά μου. Αλλά όταν διαβάζω όμως ποίηματα ή ιστορικά που έχουν γραφεί στην ποντιακή γλώσσα, και επειδή τέλειωσα και το γυμνάσιο, μπορώ να κάνω την ανάλυση αυτή, την πηγή των λέξεων αυτών, και πόσο σημαντικό είναι να ξέρεις να ερμηνεύσεις.
Η νεότερη γενιά, ας πούμε, η γενιά των παιδιών σου, έχει έτσι συμμετοχή ή γνώση της κουλτούρας, των ηθών, των εθήμων του ποντιακού πληθυσμού? Και θα μπορέσει να συνεχίσει στην επόμενη?
Έχουν, αλλά πολύ λίγο. Δυστυχώς αυτή είναι η πραγματικότητα. Αλλά όταν όμως τους δίνεις περιεχόμενο, όταν όμως τους δίνεις υλικό, από αυτό το υλικό ένα μικρό ποσοστό θα το κρατήσουν. Θα έχουν μια εικόνα, όπως το ντοκιουμαντέρ. Όταν το βλέπουν αυτό τα παιδιά, εδώ τώρα που είχαμε τα παιδιά από το Κοραΐσκου και μετά πήγαμε στον Άγιο Κωνσταντίνο και ήταν ορισμένα παιδιά. Αυτά πλέον έχουν γνώση αυτής της ιστορίας και είναι ένα ξεκίνημα. Από τα 100 ή 10, άμα θα συνεχίσουν όπως γίνεται πάντοτε, είναι σημαντικό.
Άρα λοιπόν ένας σοβαρός τρόπος να συνεχίσει ο ελληνισμός στην Αμερική είναι ότι οι θεσμοί να δίνουν κάτι συνεχώς, να υπάρχει μια συνεχή
και να τους
προσφορά.
δώσεις το υλικό, να ξέρουν ότι όταν θα πάνε στη Ουάσιγκτον και δούνε την αρχιτεκτονική και δούνε όλη αυτή την επιρροή, να ξέρουν ότι η στήλη αυτή είναι κορινθιακή, η άλλη είναι ιωνική. Αυτά πρέπει να κάνουμε σαν Έλληνες, ούτως ώστε να δίνει στα παιδιά το εφόδιο για να μπορούν να ξέρουν πραγματικά και να αξιοποιήσουν και να θαυμάζουν, ας πούμε, από τι προέρχονται και τι εστί ελληνισμός. Και θέλω να αναφέρω το εξής. Το 2000 η κόρη μου είχε πάει στο University of Missouri, στο Κολόμπια, και μου είπε ένα περιστατικό. Έπαιρνε βιολογία και μου λέει, παπά, μου λέει, η καθηγήτρια ήταν 30 μαθητές, 40, την πρώτη μέρα, και λέει, θα σας φωνάξω με το όνομα, last name, περάστε και φύγετε. Να ξέρω ότι εσύ είσαι ο τάδε, η τάδε. Και μόλις φτάνει στο Μαυρόπουλος, της λέει της κόρης μου, μείνε, της λέει, λιγάκι, μη φύγεις. Τέλειωσε με τους άλλους. Στο διάστημα αυτό η κόρη μου σκεφτόταν, λέει, γιατί θέλει να μείνω εγώ, να περιμένω. Και μετά άρχισε και της έλεγε, από πού είναι ο γονείς σου, από πού είσαι εσύ.
Βρήκε σύνδεσμο τις ρίζες.
Γιατί αυτή ήταν καθηγήτρια, μορφωμένη, και μου έλεγε η κόρη μου, όταν πηγαίνω, λέει, στα διάφορα departments και βλέπω τα ελληνικά γράμματα και τους κάτι τόσα και τόσα, ας πούμε, εικόνες και όλα. Αλλά πρέπει όμως αυτά γνωστοποιήσουμε στον κόσμο, στα νέα παιδιά. Να βρούμε τρόπο να τα ενημερώσουμε, να τα μορφώσουμε για να είναι περήφανα και να ξέρουν.
This is the interview with Mr. George Mavropoulos. Αγαπητέ κύριο Γιώργο, thank you very much. Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ.
My pleasure.
It was our honor. Ήταν μεγάλη μας τιμή να έχουμε τη συνέντευξη μαζί σου σήμερα εδώ στο Σικάγο.
Ελπίζω να η συνέντευξη αυτή να ήταν καλή, να συνδράμει κατά κάποιο τρόπο.
Σίγουρα.
Όσο μπορεί.
Ο φίλος ζωγραφής μέσα, sie στη grandita rail, φίλος ζωγραφής μέσα, oi, 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 φίλος ζωγραφής μέσα. Ζωγραφής μέσα, sie στη grandita rail, φίλος ζωγραφής μέσα, oi, 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 φίλος ζωγραφής μέσα.